1, 2, 3, and... I fear I have mistaken my direction, to turn from childhood and become a man, to don this heavy cloak of massed experience. I let the river fool me. I let the river fool me. You should have questioned where it ran. When the phantom scenes of memory enchant me, the lights of childhood shine before the dark, like crystal stills before a fiery altar. Consume the remnants of the child, consume the remnants of the child, and the years all left their mark. But I'm not complaining, yeah, I know it must be so, for how else could I know the sane and crazy? I'm not escaping, yes, I know I can't go back, and it's not some helpless child I wanna be. Somewhere on the razor's edge, suspended at the highest ledge, between the devil and the saint in me. As I look upon this world as I grow older, I find my eyes hard-pressed to see the new. And I wonder if this makes my time run faster, because I'm living in my mind, because I'm seeing through my mind. I cannot touch the truth, but I'm not complaining. Yeah, I know it must be so, for how else could I know what's sane or crazy? I'm not escaping, hell, I know I can't go back, and it's not some helpless child I wanna be. But somewhere on the razor's edge, suspended from the highest ledge, between the devil and the saint in me. Well, I fear I have mistaken my direction, to turn from childhood and become a man, to don this heavy cloak of massed experience. I let the river fool me, I let the river fool me, I let it fool me. You should have questioned where it ran.
Welcome to A Question of Meaning with Arthur and Katie. And we just did that song a different way than we ever have, so if it seemed a little weird at times.
Hey, don't apologize for that music. Don't apologize for anything.
That's right.
It's our second book that we're in the midst of writing. It's called We Are All Innocent by Reason of Insanity, in which we tend to argue that the insanity defense is always appropriate. And we'll say more about that on an upcoming show.
Yeah, we thought we would just kind of address the insanity of life in general, actually, in this show.
I thought it was about life in general. We weren't going to talk about the insanity of it, surely.
No, not insanity in particular, but I meant just kind of how difficult life is and how much, just struggling with being alive and what it means.
I don't think most people think that. I don't think most people think that at all. I thought I was happy until I did my first acid trip. Uh-huh. And I discovered, because I'd actually experienced real happiness for a few hours, I realized how wretchedly miserable I was. And it was obvious to a day-old Down syndrome case that and my life was unhappy. I was living with a complete psycho, jealous, petty, nattering, psycho, and an unhappy marriage, to put it mildly, 7 years of being buried alive. And I actually thought I was happy. Oh, sure, life, everybody has problems.
I don't know. I've always thought of myself as a happy person, but I always knew at the same time that I had some real problems dealing with life and dealing with relationships and dealing with having friends and feeling comfortable with myself, that I felt I was abnormal.
Well, I didn't say, I said most people. I didn't say you. You're a freak.
But I know that's not true. I think most everyone does struggle with a fear that they are abnormal.
Let's see, what would be a perfect cliche? Oh, everybody has problems. I mean, no life is trouble-free. Into every life, a little rain must fall.
I think you are being...
But it's not going to rain forever. Randy Newman.
I think you are, really buying people's acts that they put on to cover their insecurities in the world. I think the truth is, when you get people alone late at night, or the period of time when we all are alone with ourselves, I don't think people. I think when people are honest, they will tell you, no, I also feel abnormal. I also feel inadequate. I also feel like there's something wrong with me at the core. Because that's part of. Like what you just said in that song, "Childhood Gone." I feel like I've mistaken my direction. What did I leave behind? So what in that song, "Childhood Gone"? What did you mean by that? Mistaken my direction.
Albert Einstein said, "Those who have lost the sense of wonder and awe, the ability to feel awe at the universe, at life, are as good as dead." Mm-hmm. And I think it's not exactly, but it's very much what, the carpenter was talking about, what Jesus was talking about when he said, become as a little child again. Mm-hmm. And that is because in a child, there's the absence of the pretension of knowing, of really thinking you got it all figured out. When you're a child, you don't have it figured out. And time goes slow. We actually, think that the reason that a summer vacation when you were a young kid used to last for a geological age. And now it's like a summer's in a blink of an eye, it's gone. You know why? Because you're not experiencing it anymore. You've seen it. I've been there, done that. Don't have to give it my full attention. It's like, don't want to get too far afield. But I think that's what we miss, is the sense of wonder and openness and genuine curiosity. And we're not encumbered by the hilarious presumption that we know our ass from our elbow, basically.
Well, I don't think that's too far afield. I think that really is, for me, one of the main points that you make in that song is, I find my eyes hard pressed to see the new, is the line. And the truth is that every moment of now is a completely new moment. Everything has changed.
That's right.
And yet we go through our days acting like it's exactly the same. I wake up at the same time. When we take a shower, we wash our bodies in the same way. You get ruts in how you dry your toes.
Same leg through the trousers.
Right, that's right. We have the same breakfast. We drive the same route to work. We do the same job. We come home to the same family. I mean, it looks like everything is exactly the same.
I love you.
That's right.
Love you.
I think we covered it. That's right. And one of the examples we show of this is that you can really see this in action, how this affects our lives, is when you're going to a place for the first time. Let's say you just got a new job and you're having to follow the directions to the new office, and you're paying attention because everything is new. You have never gone this way before, so everything along the path is different and new, and so you really pay attention to it. You're looking at the sights. You're worried about getting to the job on time, so you're really present and aware. And it seems like it's taking you. It takes a long time, but a couple weeks later, we're not paying attention to you right now.
Everybody wants to get into the act, or a cat is trying to get in the act. Stop it. Behave yourself.
So a couple of weeks later, when you've driven the path, a number of times, for 2 weeks, you've got your job. All of a sudden, it seems like, how did it ever seem to take so long? Because now you know the way, and you're not really paying attention. You're thinking about the argument you had with your wife the day before, or the problem with your child, and the next you leave the home, and the next minute it feels like you're at work, or a lot of us have the experience of missing an exit on a freeway because we drive right by it. We're just like so oblivious to what's going on around us.
That's the way the mind works. It gets into prioritizing input. Our attention that's what's so dangerous about those cell phones and other nonsense behind the wheel. That your attention is literally, well, I don't want to get into the cell phone.
Yeah. But as a child, you are seeing, when you see babies, they're like looking in the air. We don't even what are they looking at? Because we have so lost the ability to just to have that sense of wonder about us. And I think that's what one of the things you're talking about when you talk about be as a child again, is recapture that sense of appreciation of the moment, of the now, as being fresh and new.
That's right. I mean, like the wonder drug LSD that changed my life when I was 28 years old. I might as well talk about it. This is not an endorsement to do acid. If you're not ready for it, it can really bend your head, seriously. But, I was looking for some red-hot sex with a 6-foot-tall strawberry blonde Amazon that I met on the streets of San Francisco. She turned me on, and I thought that's what was in store for me, but instead I had what at the time I called a certified religious experience. I took the red pill. I saw reality in a way that I'd never dreamed possible before. And the reason I was in paradise for a few hours is because I was free of the subjective value judgments that were discoloring everything. I thought I loved nature. I used to love to go out and hike and be in the woods and everything. I realized I'd seen like a cardboard cutout of nature. I had no idea of the intricacy, that every tree had its life story carved in its bark. I could see its history and its age and its young springy saplings, babies, full of energy and light, and the old gnarled growths. It was a refinement of senses. People talk about acid as a hallucinogen. Never for me. It was a magnificent refiner of objective reality, showing me the world. Rocks are hard, water's wet, in an it was like I'd been myopic for 28 years and had been given perfect corrective eyewear to put on. And I thought maybe the way to go with this, so why does that happen? Why is this... So why is childhood gone? This song actually kind of came out of an experience I once had of, I don't know if anybody knows what Rolfing is. It was developed by this German named Ida Rolf, and it's a way of freeing up, underlying fiscal tissue that separates the muscles or something. I can't get into it. I half understand it. But it was producing some remarkable results. I was going through Rolfing, and one week I dreamed of death, vivid Technicolor dreams involving death 4 nights in a row. I've never dreamed anything in my life 2 nights in a row. And one, we were like Roman slaves who had led a revolt, and we were in the kitchen and we got steak knives, serrated steak knives, and we're going around stabbing people in the revolt. And another one was a 747 had crashed, and I was walking amidst the wreckage, and all these bodies were still in their seats and everything. Really heavy stuff. So I prescribed myself, this is way back, statute of limitations, when I was seriously experimenting with LSD, I prescribed an acid trip to see if I could see what came up. And I just did this in my little apartment in San Francisco. What came up was grief, like I had never experienced before. Just oceanic grief from within, like things. I thought I was relieved to get out of my first marriage, my first disaster, but I saw it as a really, really, all the stuff that I felt about it, so sad that people who cared about each other could wind up hating each other that much, and just, all that came up, the grief about that. But one of the most significant and surprising things was I felt so much grief for my childhood. I grieved for my lost childhood, and I'd, always been hungry. I thought to put as much distance between me and that, kind of unknowing state as I could.
Sure, we all do. We all are anxious to grow up when we're children.
But it was definitely there.
Yeah.
And
what was it that what was it about the childhood that you felt you were grieving for?
I don't know, sunny days, just
Wow.
green hills
Yeah.
and sunny days and adventure and play,
Yeah.
the ability to really play. And I'm sure it was the awe and the magic and the wonder instead of just being covered with kind of a jaded, cynical, oh, I've been there, seen that. I know what's going on, I don't have to give my attention to anything because I know it all. And when that idiotic mindset, which we call subjective ego domination, when that was removed on my first acid trip, man, it was like paradise, I mean, I could see every leaf on a hillside, hundreds of yards away. I could see a wind come down the hill and turn every leaf and catch the sunlight. I mean, it was just a refinement beyond, you ever go swimming on acid? It's like a friend of mine described it as swimming in liquid jello. The actual palpable mass of the water is unbelievable. This is not an endorsement, kids.
It sure sounds like one. But I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about another line from the song, which is the burden of massed experience. And that is, it feels like that when you're a child, you're free. You don't carry a lot of the history behind you. When we don't even remember things from day to day. Like if you have a fight with somebody one day, you're free of it the next day. You don't remember it. But that's what, as adults, we start carrying around this burden of our past that weighs us down. It makes me think of how Trudeau in his Doonesbury draws his characters, and the children are wide-eyed and their eyes are circles. But as they get older, there's like everything starts drooping down, and it's like the weight of, maybe in our brains of all that thinking and memories is, pressing down and clouding our eye. And I think, it's past, our memories of what we've done in our past. I mean, how much is that burden us down? But then all our judgments.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
But I think that I think we should talk about the way the mind is programmed, because that's where it comes from. That's what takes childhood, or the magic and the wonder, and really it's humility. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even speak after this trip the next day. I could not talk. It was like, I don't know. What from Shinola? It's before 11 o'clock. We should have an after 11 o'clock, so we don't have to censor ourselves.
Before.
We're not doing too badly. Because I was going to talk about survival. We've talked about survival in this show, and the way the mind is programmed. But what is survival? What is survival? Because the mind operates very much from survival. And we define survival as the effort of a specific form to maintain its existent structural integrity. That means every physical form in the universe is trying to remain unchanged through time. If you push on a balloon with your finger, poke at a balloon, it'll resist. It's trying to maintain its structural integrity. It's trying to remain unchanged. There are two of the forces of the universe are trying to keep everything together, and two forces in the universe are trying to tear everything apart. And as coincidence would have it, they're so perfectly balanced that we have a stable. You wake up in the morning, I wake up in our new house here in Asheville, and I can look at it and I can see the same trees in the same place, and it looks like nothing's changed. It gives us a nice, stable environment to play in, to live our lives in, mostly. And so that's the survival dynamic, is the effort of a specific form to remain unchanged through time. Okay, there's a problem with that, because those two interactional forces are wreaking change upon every physical form in the universe constantly. If you could look at a diamond through a powerful enough microscope, you would see constant change going on, albeit very slowly compared to other more fluid objects. So the point to that is that no physical form in the universe can survive unchanged from one measurable unit of time to the next. Everything's changing in the physical realm.
Right. So if you did a time lapse of the view out your window, you'd be seeing quite a bit of change happening.
Right. And if you got in closer, like an electron microscope of a tree trunk, it'd just be it'd be a boiling of change. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's so much for the physical universe. that's one of the reasons, one of my favorite lines from The Game of God, our first book, is existence as form is intolerable because survival as form is impossible. The natural goal of survival is immortality. It's completely futile in physical form. Okay.
Maybe that's what really ends childhood, is when we finally realize we're going to die.
Yeah. Could
maybe.
be. No Santa Claus.
That's right. The end of magic.
No Santa Claus, and you're going to die.
That's right.
You're going to work yourself to death. You're going to work until you drop, and then we're going to put you out in the pasture for, a time and half a time, and then you're going to croak. If you listen to the academics, and the scientists, they're going to say you're going to die a meaningless death into a total black void.
Your life meant nothing.
Nothing.
Wow.
Didn't really matter whether, if you really think that's true, it honestly doesn't matter if you live like Adolf Hitler or Ted Bundy or Mother Teresa. It doesn't matter a bit.
Well, you might as well have all the fun you can get while you're here. I mean, seems to me that's
right. It's a drug show. That's what this is. Turning into the drug show.
The futility of life is, that's why people do drugs, because life seems futile.
That's right. And remember, kids, if you really are going to do drugs, do good drugs. I mean, it's a waste of money and it's a lousy high. So
that's right.
That's our public service message.
I think you were talking about...
I thought I'd finished. It was about survival. Okay, so physical form changes every second, no matter how much we wish otherwise. Nothing physically survives. But the same definition applies to what we call non-physical thought forms: ideas, beliefs, concepts, opinions. All Jews are money grabbers. Blacks are inferior to whites. Stuff like that. That's what we call a non-physical surviving thought form. It's a discrete unit of thought. It is a separate entity unto itself. If you didn't have individual thoughts like pine tree and an individual thought called scrambled eggs, you'd have a complete anarchy in your brain. You'd have scrambled trees and pine eggs, which I hope I never meet either of them. So the pertinent feature of a non-physical thought form is that it's non-physical, and therefore it is not subject to the interactional laws of change in the physical universe. So a belief like, what did I say the other week, the only good Bosnian is a dead Bosnian, unless that's revealed as false, it has absolute sway over the believer. It can be handed down from generation to generation and remain structurally unchanged forever until it's exposed as a lie or a partial lie and, corrected. So guess what we're run by? Guess what the subjective ego is made entirely of? Non-physical surviving thought forms that have complete sway. Like, I'm no good, I'm ugly, I'm overweight. Well, there's undeniable evidence of that. Am I a fatty? Yes. I'm technically obese. Hear the technically, isn't that good?
Yeah, I like the technically.
I am obese.
But you're repulsive,
that's
or you're ugly,
fact.
or you're bad and wrong because you're overweight. Those are the subjective beliefs associated with that fact.
Most people will probably agree. Viewing at home. Because why? Because we're conditioned.
That's right.
All these beautiful, young, physically perfect specimens that we... God, man, I can remember the 50s and the 60s. Remember when old people were, respected in society? Mm-hmm. I mean, in ads, go look at some old magazines from the 50s. Old people are heavily represented.
That's right.
What did Richard Pryor say? You don't get to be old by being a fool.
And look at the beautiful nudes from the Renaissance paintings. They were plump, to use a nice word.
But they weren't old. Even then, there was
I was just saying another
Even then, there
example.
was a prejudice.
I was using the prejudice against weight, not the
prejudice
against age.
Right.
There.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's true.
So as a child, we are born, with, you could use the Kantian theory of a priori object, that we have the capability of putting together the objective reality of space, time, things. So we recognize an objective reality, but the subjective reality of good, bad is put together over as we grow up, and we're taught by our society to put together those, to form and hold those different thought forms that Arthur's talking about. that form our subjective reality. And I would say, so that's the massed experience that we put together and that
It's not
pulls
looking,
us away from the experience of the now, the experience of the wonder and the awe and the appreciation of the perfection of the now that we had as children.
That's right.
Like I love Arthur. Arthur was spent some time in a wheelchair, and I love the story he tells about the first time after months in the hospital, he went out into the outside world. They were a few of the people in wheelchairs were taken to a mall, and some of the people in the wheelchairs were paralyzed, fully. I mean, like completely paralyzed. So they didn't appear.
I was too at that time. I couldn't move either.
Yeah. Which I'm sure he'll talk about a little more relating to a song later we do. But, and people would see, these cripples being wheeled in the mall.
Parade of the damned.
And when they would see them coming, they would rush into a store to get, so they wouldn't have to deal with them. They wouldn't have to confront them or figure out how to, should I look at them? Should I not look at them? What's the right way to behave here? And the one exception to this just complete non-acceptance of them were the children, in particular babies. And you tell that.
It was the babies in their strollers. They were looking at 5 adults in adult-sized strollers being pushed by, and they were just like just watching with complete fascination, no judgment whatsoever. They hadn't been programmed yet with the value judgments that, as Lawrence Durrell put it, illness invites contempt. The sick man knows it. There's a juju, a taboo there. There's something that there's something unhealthy, something not worthy of the tribe.
Yeah, but
it's a threat.
And as children, we have to be taught to think those ways.
That's right.
And
you see young little kids will go up and kiss a whiskery, really old, wrinkled man, with warts growing on his face. And couldn't care less.
That's right. Doesn't mean anything. Well, how about doing another song?
Okay.
Let's do Cradle Song.
So did we finish that? Kind of, sort of? That's how the mind gets programmed. Yeah. I think that's kind of nice.
Yeah, I think it's very
That's what
nice.
survival is. It's trying to, we were going to, maybe we will delve into politics at some point, but I was thinking that as the natural goal, let me get over here, as the natural goal of survival is immortality, so the natural goal of capitalism is monopoly. I've got another one the other night. I was watching that movie.
We just watched Michael Moore's Capitalism, A Love Story.
What are we doing?
You do it on 3, B flat.
Okay. What's this?
I don't know. You were
Cradle
song. Yeah,
Okay.
What are we doing? Cradle Song.
Yeah, there's a good story behind this. I wrote this to my daughter, who, when she was 7 months old, I had an amazing experience with. Until that time, I pretty much did goo-goo, Gucci, aren't you cute, and related to her pretty much like that. She and her mother had a great connection, especially when they were nursing, they were nursing. And
this isn't me, by the way.
That is this victim number 2. Or victims number 2, I should say. And I tripped around her for the first time since she'd been born, 7 months, and I had complete telepathic communication with her. It's almost like you have to you have to believe me. I saw these little green men, and they told me the meaning of life. But for 15, 20 minutes. It was like a complete articulate being came out of her and was just there with me. She kind of switched back and forth to her baby personality that was just developing, and then the inner being would come out. And if anyone out there has ever experienced telepathic communication, you know what I'm talking about. It's when you return to this verbal stuff, it's like gorilla grunts in comparison to the incredible hyper-articulateness. So I had the feeling that maybe, oh God, she's always been in there trying to communicate with me. And that's what I wrote this song, Cradle Song, about. But I realized over time that that's not true, because I would have gotten that even as unconscious as I was, I'd have seen that. it was that because I was really there for the first time, I'd been free of my having it all figured out still around her, and I was able to see through her developing ego, her defenses, into her soul, is the way I like to put it. And her soul came out and was with me, her articulate, fully conscious, equal being that was inside this 7-month-old baby body came out, and we hung together for 15 or 20 minutes. One of my favorites. But anyway, even though this song is not exactly accurate, it still pretty well sums up the cradle experience. 1, 2, 3, and... You once had nothing but your love to give. They betrayed you time and time again. The ones who'd forgotten what it's like to feel gave back a love they could not help pretend. And they never saw it in your eyes. They could not see. They never heard it in your cries. They could not hear. They never dreamed it in their wildest dreams that you could be there. You once had nothing but yourself alone, and they went on to give you a new name. And soon you'd forgotten what the old one was. You lost it every time you played their game. And they never saw it in your eyes. They could not see. They never heard it in your cries. They could not hear. They never dreamed it in their wildest dreams that you could be there. You once had nothing, let alone the choice to bite the apple or leave it alone. But play is your nature, it is what you're for. A life, the greatest game that you could own. And they never saw it in your eyes. They could not see. They never heard it in your cries. They could not hear. They never dreamed it in their wildest dreams that you could be there. You could be there. You could be there. And actually the you is, if you've heard our earlier shows, that we think the whole universe is God in a state of amnesia, just slumming, experiencing finite survival-based existence, that's what you are. When nobody ever dreamed their baby, that's God lying there in the cradle looking back at you. And if you really could plumb all the way, if you could go all the way in, you'd be hanging with God.
Yeah, I was thinking as you're saying that, I mean, how I have the experience that inside me, I'm the same person that I was when I was at my earliest memories. You know, that inner core of my beingness is the same. You know, the way that which is looking out through my eyes. You know, the perspective I have on the world is the same. You know, that there's been lots and lots of things that have changed, but that essence of who I feel I am, has not changed at all during my lifetime.
And what we think is that that's the soul level. That's not God. I don't know if reincarnation is real, but it makes a lot of sense to me. You hear all these near-death experiences. I'm really not into Elvis sightings, but if you really look at near-death experiences, people are always them. They're talking about, I saw my life reviewed. I was going down a tunnel of light. I interacted with these other people who died before, or I was interacting with spirit guides or whatever. But there's always a sense of self. And I've long thought of the soul as like an M&M. The rich chocolate center is God consciousness trapped in form. The form is that thin candy shell that can go, some people are full of nuts,
No, I was just thinking some have a very, very thick shell. It's the thickness of your shell. That's maybe what we're talking about here.
So when you die, you lose your identity and all that stuff in terms of your worldly name. That doesn't mean anything anymore. But you still are trapped in that. You still have that shell that's keeping God consciousness conveniently, packaged in. Otherwise, you just kind of go through life and you turn into God. I mean, what would be the sense of that?
This Arthur said we were working on this book called "We Are All Innocent," and someone who read our manuscript, one of the things that he really responded to was our thinking that we call it like the universe game is like an onion, and there's multiple layers that you peel off, and because a lot of New Age philosophy, it seems like they say that we go from this level and we cross over into the spirit land with nothing in between. And we think that's kind of unimaginative and boring. There's so many variations of I am so, let's say my shell is still pretty thick. Okay, we'll say that. And I mean, I can imagine all the joys of having a life with a diminishing thickness shell that, as you would progress towards enlightenment, and grow in knowledge and wisdom and understanding, how joyous those states of existence would be. And I want to experience those. I don't want to go from this level to God. How boring.
And you can also say that we're given a little sneak preview of that called childhood every lifetime.
Right.
Those of us who are fortunate to have had a good childhood, which I consider myself to have had, amidst chaos and broken family, but still, I mean, that you can't keep a good kid down, but you can. Sometimes kids are horribly mistreated. I once heard Katie tell her father, very, very wonderful man, that I heard her say, "Thank you for giving me a safe childhood." And but you do get a taste of immortality, a foretaste, maybe by just that wonderful state of consciousness, even though it comes at a price. You're completely helpless and gullible and, subject to all the slings and arrows that are coming your way.
Well, maybe that's why we're so desperate to grow up, is because we hate being helpless. So we really want to have control over our lives, but we don't know the cost that control is going to bring, which is all the cares of the adult world.
Not to mention where you're ultimately headed. There was a great cartoon, I think was it Maxine? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Woman with a ponytail, and she shows her as a little girl, and she's running, saying, "Faster!" And then it shows her on a scooter, pushing herself, going, "Faster!" And then it shows her on a bicycle, going, "Faster!" And then it shows her in a sports car, going, "Faster!" And finally, after this progression, she's in a wheelchair, and she's old and holding onto the brakes, going, "Slow down!"
That's right. That's right. Well, one of the things I like in that song, Cradle Song, is the compassion for the adults in that. They could be, because when we're children and we our parents don't love us, we kind of go through that period. I had this fantasy that one I had made some, I can't remember what. It seems like it was like a photo album out of cardboard and grade school art class.
I bet it had glitter on it.
Yeah, it was, and I'd given it to my mom for Mother's Day, and I was so proud of it. And then, 2 weeks later, I was up in the attic, and I found my precious art just laid up there like it didn't matter. And I was sure I'd been adopted. Here was proof that I was not loved. I didn't need any more evidence than that. All the other kids were part of the, were born from my mother, but I alone was, separate. And, we're so sure that, and so we have this, I guess, these fears of our parents not loving us. But that in your song, it's like they couldn't love us because they couldn't see. They had no idea who we were. They were all wrapped up in their own problems and inability to see. They can't. We have enough trouble seeing it in that we're the light, that it's here inside us, much less seeing it in our babies.
That's right. Much less seeing it in Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck or W. Or for some people, Obama, or, whoever. We keep saying love is the answer. Well, love is saying that. Love is saying that the person that you hate can't help it. That's the way they are. That's not bleeding heart liberalism. That is, you know what Jesus' love really is? It's about as hard, diamond, hardcore, pragmatic as you can get. As a matter of fact, in the game of God, we say love is the optimum form of survival. Whoops. Why don't you get the phone, Katie, and just turn that phone off and put our cat up here since she seems to be intent on. No, we're not going to do that.
I'm too hooked into the. Forget it. The phone's ringing.
Listen, our phone is ringing. We forgot to unplug one. But it's very pragmatic. It's dealing with objective reality, accepting the way it really is. There's certain people who make a living on encouraging hate and fomenting intolerance and divisiveness. They're out there, and they make a handsome living on it. They're on the radio all the time. The right wing virtually dominates. When you talk about liberal media, give me a break.
Okay, now we're not going into that today.
No, because the point is that if you hate them, they got you.
Yeah.
And I mean, George Bush, that guy is a complete psychopath. But most of the time, I saw him as a deliberate, cunning weasel. And I took years off my life hating him. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because he's crazy. And anybody who hates crazy people is crazy too, which I am. He can't help it. That's who he is. I mean, it doesn't mean you let serial killers walk around loose, but it doesn't mean you hate the sick.
Well, you said love is pragmatic, that Jesus was talking about. So how, and that love is the optimum state of survival. So how would loving George Bush have made your actions more pragmatic?
Loving him per se, it would have certainly been much more conducive to my blood pressure instead of getting up and drinking coffee and reading the Washington Post and the New York Times every day. You were talking about somebody. We were at a dinner party once in Highlands, and this woman said, I think Fox News is fair and balanced. And I have never had the experience of laughing in someone's face before. And it was just, I mean, it was like, it was embarrassing. It was, we shouldn't have, but we did. We both just laughed in her face. But it would have, on a pragmatic level, it would have helped my blood pressure and probably maybe not reduced my lifespan by indulging in a chronic state of hatred for someone. I didn't even know him. Mm-hmm. I saw what he did. And, we saw, as a matter, you mentioned Michael Moore's documentary, Michael Moore. His capitalism, there were clips of Bush. I mean, anybody with a shred of discernment could see the guy was a lying weasel in a basket case. What a screwed up individual to spend 8 years. I mean, fortunately, we have somebody who was a lot more pragmatic named Dick Cheney, who was actually running the country. Eventually, I think that story will come out. I don't know that. But that would help. It would help my blood pressure. It would have helped my blood pressure. Overall, it's like coming to grips with reality instead of believing easy answer from radio personalities. We could look and see that this country was actually founded on democratic principles, and the power really is invested in the people. We could throw out the Supreme Court. We could clean house in Washington, D.C. But I think the American people have become incredibly lazy. Probably the worst invention in the world is what you're looking at us on right now, television. That's probably the final stake through the heart of any hope this country had.
Okay, so we're going to get onto politics another time.
Oh, that's true.
We have plenty to say.
Okay.
Because I do want to get to this.
Anyway, but it is pragmatic. Love is...
At least another one of our songs.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a very important
Let's do crippled.
Yeah, and so this, you mentioned me telling my dad, thanking him for having a safe childhood, which I did because, I had, it was like a 50s Beaver Cleaver, Leave It to Beaver childhood. I had that until I was about 15 and my parents divorced, and then it all fell apart. But even still, I had all sorts of insecurities and felt I was abnormal, as I was talking earlier, even with that incredibly safe and protected and privileged childhood.
Her father was a child psychiatrist.
My stay-at-home mother, So that's what, just as an introduction to this song, that it's going to use a word that's not PC today. But I think it
I'm
has
a cripple. I can say cripple. Cripple, 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 cripple.
I think it has a powerful message that makes the use of that word justified.
For all fall short of the glory of God.
Well, we'll see about
Amen.
that. Let's hear the song first.
Hey, cripple, do you think about the time when you were walking? Did you ever not know life's a hunter stalking? It's a sickness that you might say is going round. Just a matter of time till it's bound to cut you down. Crippled for life. Crippled for life. Crippled for life. Hey, cripple. Once there was a time when you were free and laughing, running on the meadows, endless summers passing, and your body was like the love you wore inside. And sorry. And your body was like the love you wore inside. And the beauty of life eclipsed all need for pride. Oh, crippled for life. Crippled for life. Crippled for life. Hey, cripple, why don't you admit you're haunted by the memory, and that you keep a spark of hope alive so dimly, and the light of it's just enough to see your way. Yeah, you're hoping to stand and walk again someday. Crippled for life. Crippled for life. Crippled for life. Hey, cripple, you are not alone, but part of oh so many. Look around for help, they see if you find any. And the crutches they use aren't enough to make them whole. Yeah, they're limping through life on an artificial soul. Yeah, crippled for life. Crippled for life. Oh, crippled for life. Crippled for life. Whoa, crippled for life. Crippled for life. Crippled for life. Crippled for life. Crippled for life.
Ooh, that's pretty brutal,
Psychologically
At times, at times, we've been reluctant to do that song because it just seems too outrageous. People, maybe
my mother
won't get
hated
it.
that song. Of course, that was a basket case.
Well, and as we, mentioned briefly earlier, Arthur was paralyzed from the neck down with a disease called Guillain-Barré syndrome, and still has the effects of it somewhat today. And so that gives him
Leg braces.
Yeah. Some claim to the title cripple.
Yes, I'm a certified cripple.
But I mean, for
proud of it.
For me, what it is that the statement is that we are all psychological cripples to some extent or another. And some of us are, are better or
Better
not,
at hiding it?
well, better at hiding it. And I do think that some people are more crippled than others.
no question about
I mean,
it.
come on, we're not going to say that everybody's equally crippled, but that everyone is crippled to some degree, that there is nobody psychologically whole. I think that, it's funny, Arthur said my dad's a child psychiatrist, and we were talking to him about the definition of insanity. And he said that it has no meaning to the psychiatric community, that sanity and insanity is a legal term, that it's all to do with whether you can be held responsible for your actions. But, and this is the next time I have a conversation with my dad, I want to really get an answer to this question. Well, because that kind of implies that does the psychiatric community even have a concept of sanity? I'm not really sure whether, they may say that everybody is basically has, it's just a question of which neuroses or psychoses, you're afflicted with. But that's really what we think, is that all of us are crippled. That's really what we mean.
Well, I got a good acid test for you. Very simple. Go look in a mirror. If you think you know what you're looking at, you're crazy.
Or you're
crazy.
Yeah.
The more you think you know who you are, or what you are, or where you are, or why you are, or when you are, or what you're doing, or where you came from, or where you're going, you're nuts. And you know what? To get along in this life, we all have to believe all that stuff. We all have to act like we know all that stuff. Have confidence in yourself. Like yourself. To get ahead, love yourself, Yeah, love what? Say what? How can I love something I don't even know what it is? How can I like it? How can I accept what I can't even see? We live our lives on a titanic mystery. All of us. And then don't go running to science, because they'll tell you the same thing. They don't know what one dot of this stuff is, much less who they really are. Really, know is a big word, as we've said in an earlier show. So that's a good acid test for, just go look in the nearest reflecting surface. And if you really think you know what you're looking at, you're crazy. And that doesn't mean to be harsh, I don't mean to be brutal, but if you want to, do the acid test, that's our acid test. Our definition of insanity is the state of confusing our subjective opinion with objective fact. And the greater you can be a clinical mental patient, clinically insane by our human standards, dying of thirst in the Sahara Desert, and you're sitting right next to a water fountain in a mental hospital. There's that. You can redshift your inability to perceive objective reality objectively that far. You can die of thirst. You can be anorexic. You can starve yourself to death because you still think you look fat. When you're looking in the mirror, there's a skeleton staring back at you, and you think you're fat. That's how much it can distort.
And how many of us go to a party or go out for the evening and we have to have a drink because we are so insecure about ourselves that we need the lubrication to feel comfortable with ourselves. What's that Randy Newman line? Takes a whole lot of medicine for me to pretend that I'm somebody else. And that's how widespread is drug use socially.
That's right.
And I would, because I've been sober a lot, I can see that, how distortive even one drink is on people's consciousness. And not to say that I don't enjoy the beers of Asheville.
Oh, right on.
But that's the thing is that's what we use. A lot of alcohol use is really just to overcome the deep-rooted insecurities and feeling of unworthiness and abnormality, freakishness. Well, I think maybe we have time to do this one more song.
What's that?
You're no.
Oh yeah.
And we're gonna do that on two, I think. And I had a really remarkable experience with this song. One day I was walking. It's called.
Excuse me for tuning.
Okay, it's called "You're No Different Than Me," and I couldn't quite get the grammatical structure of that sentence or phrase. I always thought it was, what do you mean, than me? It just didn't seem right. And so one day I was walking down the street with not Arthur, with someone else, and I was thinking about that song, and it occurred to me, oh, that's what he means by that. You're no different than me means we're all the same in terms of our distance from the one, from God. And you're no different than I am in terms of being a creature of God. And later when I saw Arthur, I said, wow, I finally got what that song means. And we traced it. He was with someone playing music and singing that song, and it had to have been, I mean, it might as well be the precise moment.
Sure.
That I had that realization. The person he was playing music with had the same realization of the meaning. And it was really interesting.
Yeah, I've always considered this like one of my perfect songs. It just kind of came out this way. It just feels so right.
Oh, aren't we playing it on 2?
Oh, yeah, we're playing it on 2. We don't play in keys. We play in like 1 or 3
That's
or 2. How's our time doing? Okay.
We got to...
1, 2, 3. There's a wave that's building out upon the sleeping sea. There's a dawn that's breaking where the night has ceased to be. There's a tide that's turning from a force that must be free. You're no different than me. There's a painful lesson, and the learning comes so hard. There's a time of trial when the answer's locked and barred. There's a desperate gamble when you play your only card. You're no different than me. You're no different than me. How could the answer stay hidden while standing before us? How could so many for so long be virtually blind? How could the truth that I love you lie covered in old dust? How could I wander alone through the realms of my mind? There's a wind arising that's gonna rend the temple veil. There's an earthquake building that's gonna make the fault lines quail. There's the last lost moment just before you find the trail. You're no different than me. 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 You're no different than me.
And maybe we're all the same, and then we have to go through the same stages of growth and transformation.
And the essentials, we're all the same.
Right.
Well, and we're out of time.
We're out of time again.
Thank you very much for joining us, and tune in next time for another
Question of Meaning.